Grace's hands trembled as she mopped the billionaire's marble floor. The smell of lemon polish filled the air, shining against the tall glass windows that looked over Chicago. Her eyes stopped on something small under the desk, a black leather wallet, thick and heavy. Her heart began to race. For a moment, the world felt quiet, as if time itself had paused just for her. Before I begin, I want to mention that my channel Dreams is having a $200 giveaway to celebrate our subscribers. I can hardly believe so many people are interested in these stories. To participate, it's simple. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like this video, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, a little about yourself, or share a beautiful story. I'd love to know who you are. Now, let's get back to my story. Grace knelt slowly. The wallet looked new, smooth, and expensive. She picked it up carefully with both hands. When she opened it, her breath caught, $100 bills, a shiny black card with gold letters, and the name Ethan Cole. Everyone in the building knew that name. He was the owner of Cole Industries, a man worth billions. Her fingers shook. That money could pay her rent, her mother's hospital bills, and maybe help her brother stay in school. She looked around. No cameras. No one else in the room. It would be so easy to slip one bill out. Just one. But then she heard her mother's voice in her head, soft but firm, "Grace, what you do when no one is watching shows who you truly are." She swallowed hard and closed the wallet. She held it close to her chest and whispered, "I'll return it." As she continued cleaning, she tried not to think about it. Yet every sound, the hum of the air conditioner, the echo of her shoes, seemed to whisper the same thing: you could have kept it. Later, in the service elevator, she glanced again at the wallet in her bag. It felt like it weighed 10 pounds. She could almost hear her coworkers' voices teasing her. "You're too honest for your own good, Grace." But something inside her told her this moment mattered. Maybe it was a test, not from Ethan Cole, but from life itself. When her shift ended, the sky outside was painted orange and pink. Grace pulled her coat tighter against the cold wind and looked down at her bag. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "I'll call his office and return it myself." She didn't know that this one small choice would change everything, that the man whose wallet she held had planted it there on purpose, waiting to see if anyone in his cold, rich world still believed in honesty. That night, Grace sat in her tiny apartment on the south side. The walls were thin, and the sound of traffic mixed with her mother's weak cough from the bedroom. On the small kitchen table lay the billionaire's wallet. Its leather glowed under the dim yellow bulb. She stared at it for a long time. Her hands felt heavy. So many thoughts ran through her mind: rent, hospital bills, her brother's college dream. It would take only one bill to fix something. Just one. But she pushed the thought away and whispered, "I have to do the right thing." Grace reached for her old phone and searched online for Cole Industries. Her stomach tightened as she found the office number. She hesitated before pressing call. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a calm, professional woman's voice answered, "Good evening, this is Cole Industries." Grace's voice shook. "Hi, my name's Grace Turner. I work at the Cole residences as a maid. I think I found something that belongs to Mr. Cole." "Please hold," the woman said quickly. Soft classical music played. Grace stared at the wallet again, biting her lip. She thought the woman might never come back. Then the line clicked, and another voice filled her ear, deep, steady, and cold. "This is Ethan Cole," the man said. "You have my wallet?" Grace's chest tightened. "Yes, sir. I found it this morning in your office. I wanted to return it to you." Silence. Then his voice came again, slow and skeptical. "Most people wouldn't do that. You must want something in return." "No, sir," she said quickly. "I don't want a reward. I just wanted to do what's right." Another pause. "Interesting," he said softly. "Not many people think that way anymore." Grace didn't know what to say, so she stayed quiet. "Bring it to my office tomorrow. 10 a.m. sharp," Ethan added. "Don't be late." Before she could answer, the call ended. Grace stared at her phone in disbelief. He hadn't even said thank you. His voice was firm, like he was giving an order instead of accepting kindness. She looked at the wallet again and whispered, "What kind of man tests honesty like this?" Her mother called from the bedroom. "Gracie, who was that?" Grace forced a smile and walked over. Just someone who lost something important, Mama. Her mother smiled weakly. You always find ways to do good, even when it costs you. Later that night, as Grace lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. She kept replaying his voice in her head, cold, powerful, and distant. She wondered what kind of person lived in a world where kindness was a surprise. Outside, the wind howled against the window. Grace turned to face the wall and whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll give it back." She didn't know that Ethan Cole had been waiting for this moment. The wallet wasn't lost, it was a trap he had set, a test for the people who worked for him. And Grace, without knowing it, had just walked straight into it. The next morning, Chicago's wind bit hard against Grace's face as she waited at the bus stop. The black wallet rested inside her small handbag like a secret that burned through the fabric. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard Ethan Cole's voice again, calm, deep, and almost cold. 2 buses and a short walk later, she stood before a tall glass tower with gold letters across the front, Cole Industries. The building stretched so high it seemed to touch the sky. Grace's knees felt weak. She took a deep breath and whispered, "You can do this." Inside, the lobby gleamed with white marble floors and tall silver columns. People in suits moved quickly, talking into headsets. Grace's old shoes squeaked with every step, echoing in the grand space. A guard behind the desk looked up, his eyes running over her cheap coat and nervous hands. "Can I help you?" he asked politely but with a hint of doubt. "I have an appointment with Mr. Ethan Cole." 10 a.m., Grace said softly. The guard raised a brow, picked up the phone, and spoke quietly into it. After a moment, he nodded. "Go ahead. Elevator on the left. Top floor." Grace thanked him and stepped into the elevator. Her heart thumped faster with every floor it passed. The numbers blinked higher and higher, 40. 50. 60, until it stopped at the top. The doors slid open to a quiet, bright hallway with soft lights and a large window at the end. She walked slowly, her heels clicking against the floor. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something sharp, maybe cologne. When she entered the office, she saw him. Ethan Cole. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, staring out over the city. Sunlight poured across his crisp white shirt and gray suit. His hair was neatly cut, his posture straight like he was built from steel. Without turning, he said, "Miss Turner." Grace froze. How did he know it was her? He turned then, his eyes gray and unreadable. "You found something that belongs to me?" Grace nodded and stepped forward. Her voice came out small. "Yes, sir. Your wallet." She placed it gently on his desk. Ethan's gaze followed her every move. "You opened it?" "I just looked for your name," she said quickly. "I didn't take anything." "You expect me to believe that?" His tone was calm but sharp, like a blade hidden in velvet. Grace met his eyes for the first time. "I'm telling the truth, sir." He circled his desk, stopping close enough for her to smell the faint scent of his cologne. "Everyone lies, Miss Turner. For money. For comfort. For pride. What makes you different?" Grace swallowed. "My mother always said, do the right thing, even when no one's watching. That's all I know how to do." For a brief second, something flickered in Ethan's eyes, surprise, maybe. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to her. "For your honesty," he said. Grace hesitated. "I don't want money, sir." He tilted his head slightly, curious. "Then what do you want?" "Nothing," she whispered. "Just to return what wasn't mine." For the first time, a faint smile touched his lips, though it never reached his eyes. "You're unusual, Miss Turner." She opened the envelope. Inside wasn't cash, but a white card. Cole Industries, personal assistant internship. Grace looked up, confused. "I don't understand." "You start Monday," Ethan said, walking back to his desk. "Don't be late." And with that, he turned away, leaving Grace standing there speechless. She didn't know if it was kindness or another test, but she felt something stir inside her. For the first time in years, someone had noticed her. She clutched the card tightly and whispered to herself, "What have I just stepped into?" Monday came faster than Grace expected. She stood outside the tall glass building again, this time wearing a second-hand blouse and a skirt she had ironed 3 times to make it look new. Her heart pounded. She wasn't here to clean anymore, she was here to work in an office. The security guard from before gave her a surprised look. Back again? Grace nodded, smiling nervously. Mr. Cole hired me. Internship. He blinked, clearly unsure, then checked his list. When her name appeared, his eyebrows shot up. Well, look at that. Good luck, Miss Turner. Grace stepped into the elevator, the same one that had carried her to fear last week. Now it carried her towards something unknown. When the doors opened on the top floor, everything looked different in daylight, cold, perfect, and quiet. Rows of desks gleamed under the lights. Laughter and perfume filled the air. Women in fitted suits and high heels moved gracefully, their voices soft and sharp at the same time. Grace felt like a stranger in another world. A woman with straight blonde hair and red nails approached her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You must be Grace, she said. I'm Clara Wexler, Mr. Cole's personal assistant. Grace nodded politely. Nice to meet you, ma'am. Ma'am? Clara laughed lightly. We don't use that word here. Come on. I'll show you where you'll be sitting. She led Grace to a small desk near the corner, away from the big windows and the other assistants. You'll help with schedules, errands, and office upkeep. Try to stay quiet and don't get in anyone's way. Grace nodded again. Yes, ma'am, okay. Clara's smile faded. Mr. Cole values silence and efficiency. He doesn't like mistakes. Understand? Grace's throat tightened. I understand. The day moved slowly. Grace filed papers, carried coffee, and tried to learn everyone's names. Some coworkers smiled politely, others ignored her. Still, she stayed patient, just like she had when she was a maid. She was grateful for the chance. By noon, she saw Ethan Cole walk out of his office. His presence changed the room, conversations stopped, keyboards went quiet. He moved with calm power, every step steady and deliberate. His eyes landed on her for a second. Just 1 second. Good morning, Miss Turner, he said quietly. Grace froze, then managed a small nod. Good morning, sir. When he left, whispers spread instantly across the room. Did you hear that? One woman whispered. He actually spoke to her, another said. He never greets anyone. Clara's jaw tightened. Her eyes followed Grace like a shadow. At lunch, Grace sat alone in the cafeteria, quietly eating her sandwich. 2 assistants at the next table giggled. You think she'll last a week? One asked. She doesn't even know how to hold a pen properly. Grace looked down, pretending not to hear. She had cleaned people's dirt for years. Words couldn't break her. Back upstairs, Clara walked over to her desk. Mr. Cole wants these reports sorted. Don't mix anything up. Her tone was sweet but sharp, like sugar hiding a blade. Grace smiled softly. Of course. Hours passed. When Ethan returned, Clara rushed to him with a bright smile. Sir, everything is in order. I made sure our new intern followed instructions. Ethan nodded slightly but his eyes drifted toward Grace, who was quietly arranging the last stack of papers. Good work, he said. Clara's smile twitched. She had worked under him for 5 years and never once heard those words. As the day ended, Grace packed her things and whispered to herself, maybe this is the start of something good. She didn't see Clara watching her from across the room, anger burning behind her perfect smile. Clara's fingers curled around her coffee cup, and she whispered under her breath, let's see how long you last, little maid. Grace walked out of the building that evening with tired feet but a hopeful heart, unaware that her next test was already waiting for her. The days turned into weeks, and Grace finally began to settle into her new job. Every morning, she arrived early, smiled at everyone, and worked quietly at her small desk. She didn't gossip or complain. She just did her best. But Clara noticed everything. The way Ethan's eyes sometimes lingered on Grace when she handed him reports. The way he nodded approvingly when she spoke respectfully. The other assistants joked about it, but to Clara, it wasn't funny. She had been Ethan's right hand for 5 years. She managed his meetings, his schedules, even his moods. She was sure he trusted her more than anyone, until Grace came. One afternoon, when Ethan was out at a board meeting, Clara stood in the doorway of his office and looked around. His black leather wallet sat neatly on the desk. The same wallet Grace had returned weeks ago. Clara's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She glanced around. No one was watching. Slowly, she picked it up and removed a few $100 bills. Her heart beat fast, but her face stayed calm. Then she walked to Grace's desk, pulled open the drawer, and slid the money inside. By the time Ethan returned, everything looked normal. "Good work today, everyone," he said. "I'll be heading out early." Grace smiled politely and nodded. "Have a good evening, sir." Clara waited until he left the room before calling softly, "Grace, can I talk to you for a second?" Grace turned. "Of course." Clara lowered her voice. "I noticed something strange in your drawer earlier. You might want to check it." Grace frowned and opened the drawer. Her mouth fell open. A small stack of $100 bills sat neatly under her notebook. What is this?" Clara gasped dramatically. "I was hoping you'd tell me." Before Grace could speak, Clara waved to another assistant. "Can you get Mr. Cole back up here? Now." The office went silent. Minutes later, Ethan walked in, his face unreadable. "What's going on?" Clara spoke first. "Sir, I hate to say this, but I think Miss Turner has been stealing. I found this in her drawer." She held out the money. Ethan's eyes hardened. "Is that true, Miss Turner?" Grace's voice trembled. "No, sir. I've never taken anything. I didn't even know that was there." Clara crossed her arms. "Sir, I saw it myself." Ethan's tone turned cold. "You disappoint me, Miss Turner. I gave you a chance." Tears filled Grace's eyes. "Please, you have to believe me. I didn't do this." He didn't answer. "Pack your things. Security will escort you out." The room went completely silent. Even the sound of typing stopped. Grace gathered her few belongings with shaking hands. No one met her eyes. Some whispered. Others looked away. As she reached the elevator, her chest felt tight, like she couldn't breathe. Outside, the cold rain hit her face, but she didn't move. She stood there, holding the small box of her things, her blouse soaked through. She whispered to herself, "I told the truth. Why isn't that enough?" As thunder rumbled in the distance, she began walking home. Each step felt heavier than the last. She thought of her mother, her brother, and the one time she believed good people could still win. That night, as she sat by her window watching the rain fall, she held her mother's hand and tried to smile. "It's okay, Mama. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be." But deep down, Grace knew something wasn't right. Someone had set her up. And while she didn't know who yet, she promised herself one thing: she would not let this be the end of her story. Before I continue, I want to mention that my channel Dreams is having a $200 giveaway to celebrate our subscribers. I can hardly believe so many people are interested in these stories. To participate, it's simple. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like this video, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, a little about yourself, or share a beautiful story. I'd love to know who you are. Now, let's get back to the story. Ethan Cole sat alone in his penthouse that night, staring at the city lights through the rain. The sound of thunder echoed across the skyline, but his mind was louder. He couldn't stop hearing Grace Turner's voice, the way it broke when she said, "Please, you have to believe me." He poured himself a glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. The truth was, he hadn't believed anyone in years. Not after his ex-fiancée had stolen company money and disappeared. Not after his closest business partner sold his secrets to a rival firm. To Ethan, trust was a game for fools, and he refused to be one again. But tonight, something felt different. The look in Grace's eyes didn't match the lies he was used to. There had been no fear, only heartbreak. He picked up his phone and called his driver, Paul. "Paul, did the security team send over the footage from this week?" "Yes, sir," Paul replied. "They sent everything earlier. But, there's something else you might want to see." Ethan frowned. "What is it?" Paul hesitated. "It's from the day you dropped your wallet at the Cole residences. The maid who found it, Grace, she didn't take a single thing. She even looked up, smiled, and said a short prayer before leaving it on your desk. Ethan's hand froze on the glass. You're sure? Yes, sir. I saw it myself. For a moment, Ethan didn't move. The sound of the rain outside grew heavier, tapping the glass like a quiet reminder. He closed his eyes and whispered, "What if I was wrong?" He called his head of security next. "Pull the camera footage from my office for the day before yesterday. Every angle. Now." An hour later, Ethan sat in front of his giant screen as the footage loaded. The video played quietly, Clara entering his office while he was out, standing over his desk, and slipping something into Grace's drawer. Ethan's chest tightened. His jaw clenched. "Clara," he muttered, his voice low and sharp. He watched the video twice, just to be sure. Then he leaned back, his eyes cold and full of regret. He had fired the wrong person. For years, Ethan had believed money could protect him from being hurt. But now, he realized that it had only made him blind. He had tested Grace's honesty, and failed his own. He stood up quickly, grabbed his coat, and headed for the elevator. Paul looked surprised when Ethan stepped out of the building. "Sir, are you going somewhere?" Ethan nodded. "Get the car ready. I'm going to find her." "Now?" "It's almost midnight." "I don't care." The drive across Chicago was quiet. The rain had stopped, but the road still shimmered with puddles that reflected the streetlights. Ethan looked out the window at the city, the same city where Grace probably lived in a small apartment, thinking she had lost everything. He thought of the way she had spoken that first day. "I was raised to do the right thing." Those words kept echoing in his mind. When they reached her neighborhood, Ethan asked Paul to stop. The area was old and tired, with cracked sidewalks and flickering lights. Children's toys lay scattered near the curb. "Are you sure this is the place?" Paul asked. "Yes," Ethan said softly. Through a small window on the second floor, he saw her, Grace, sitting beside her mother, helping her drink tea. She was smiling, even after everything. That smile hit him harder than any business loss ever had. "She still has hope," he whispered to himself. "Even after I took it from her." For the first time in years, Ethan felt something stir inside him, not pride or power, but guilt and admiration all at once. He turned to Paul. "Come back for me in the morning." "You're staying here, sir?" Ethan nodded. "Yes. I need to fix what I broke." He watched the light in Grace's window for a long time before walking back to his car. Tomorrow, he would knock on her door, not as a CEO testing an employee, but as a man trying to make things right. The next morning, Ethan Cole walked into his office earlier than usual. The sun had barely risen over Chicago, but the building already buzzed with quiet energy. His steps were sharp, and his face was unreadable. The entire staff could sense something was different about him today. Clara Wexler looked up from her desk, surprised. "Good morning, Mr. Cole. You're here early." Ethan didn't answer. He walked straight past her into his office and pressed the intercom. "Clara, bring me the finance reports from last week. And close the door behind you." Clara hesitated, then forced a smile and stepped inside, holding a stack of folders. "Of course, sir. Is something wrong?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "Sit down." Her smile flickered. "Sir?" "I said, sit down." Clara's legs felt weak. She sank into the chair slowly. Ethan turned his computer screen toward her. With one click, the security footage began to play. It showed Clara entering his office, glancing around, and slipping money into Grace's drawer. For a few seconds, the room was silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioner. Ethan's voice was calm but sharp. "Would you like to explain this?" Clara's face went pale. Sir, this isn't what it looks like." Ethan leaned forward. "It looks like you framed someone innocent. A woman who believed in honesty. A woman I fired because of your lie." Clara's hands trembled. "I was trying to protect you," she said weakly. "That girl didn't belong here. Everyone was talking about how much you seemed to like her." "Enough," Ethan snapped. His tone was low, but it carried through the room like thunder. "You don't protect me by destroying good people. Pack your things. Security will escort you out. Mr. Cole, please. Now." Clara's eyes filled with tears. For years, she had believed she was untouchable. But now, her lies had caught up with her. She stood slowly, clutching her purse, and walked out without another word. When the door closed, Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead. The guilt weighed on him heavier than ever. He had let his own fear of betrayal make him cruel. Grace had been right all along. He picked up his phone and called Paul, his driver. "Paul, bring the car around. We're going back to the south side." "Yes, sir," Paul said quietly. As the car moved through the city, Ethan stared out the window. He passed tall buildings and busy streets, but none of it mattered. All he could think about was the look on Grace's face when he'd fired her, the pain, the shock, the quiet dignity even in humiliation. When they reached her neighborhood, he asked Paul to stop a few houses away. "I'll go alone." Ethan stepped out, holding a small white envelope in his hand. Inside was a check and a letter he had written himself. It wasn't about money, it was about saying sorry. As he walked toward the small apartment building, he noticed how different this world was from his, the cracked sidewalks, the old cars, the smell of morning coffee from open windows. He felt out of place, like a giant stepping into a story that didn't belong to him. At the door, he took a deep breath and knocked. No answer. He knocked again. This time, a frail voice from inside called, "Who is it?" Ethan's voice softened. "Ethan Cole. I'd like to speak to Grace Turner." He heard footsteps, slow, careful, and then the door opened. Grace stood there in a simple sweater and jeans, her hair tied back. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Mr. Cole?" she asked, stunned. He nodded. "I owe you an apology." Grace crossed her arms. "You already said enough the day you fired me." "I was wrong," he said quietly. "And I intend to make it right." She didn't move, but something in his tone made her pause. Behind her, her mother called softly, "Who's at the door, dear?" Grace sighed. Just someone who finally realized the truth. For the first time in years, Ethan smiled, a real one, not the kind built for business meetings. "Grace," he said, his voice steady, "I'd like to explain everything." Grace stood frozen at the door, staring at Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had fired her without a second thought. The man before her didn't look as sharp or untouchable as he once did. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes tired, and his voice quiet. "What are you doing here, Mr. Cole?" she finally asked, her tone cold but calm. "I came to apologize," he said simply. "I was wrong about you, Grace." Grace laughed bitterly. "You think saying sorry will fix everything? You humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me feel like I was nothing." Ethan lowered his head. "I know. And I deserve every word of that." He handed her a white envelope. She didn't take it. "What's that supposed to be?" she asked. "Not money," Ethan replied quickly. "Just a letter, and a new offer. I found the real thief. I saw the footage myself. You were innocent." Grace crossed her arms. "Now you believe me?" "I should have believed you from the start," he said softly. "But I let my past make me blind. I've spent years thinking everyone was out to get something from me." From the living room, Grace's mother coughed softly. Grace turned to check on her, and Ethan glanced inside the apartment. The furniture was old, the wallpaper peeling. A pot of soup simmered quietly on the stove. It wasn't much, but it felt warm, something his own home never did. Grace's mother looked up weakly. "Is that him, dear? The man who hurt you?" Grace sighed. "Yes, Mama. That's him." The old woman nodded slowly. "Then let him speak, child. Maybe God sent him here for a reason." Ethan took a step closer, his voice trembling slightly. "I never should have tested you in the first place. I thought I was teaching the world about honesty, but it turns out I was the one who needed the lesson." Grace finally took the envelope from his hand and opened it. Inside was a letter and a new job offer, executive housekeeping manager at the Cole residences, with a salary she could hardly believe. She looked up at him, confused. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because I was wrong," Ethan said. "And because I need someone I can trust to help me rebuild what I broke." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with everything that had happened, the pain, the anger, the guilt. Grace took a slow breath. You don't trust people easily, do you? He shook his head. Not anymore. But I'm trying. Her voice softened, though her eyes still held pain. You can't buy forgiveness, Mr. Cole. I know, he said. That's why I'm not asking for it. I just want a chance to make things right. Grace looked down at the letter again. Her hands trembled slightly. For the first time in a long while, she saw something human in his eyes, not power, not pride, but regret. She finally nodded. I'll think about it. Ethan gave a small, grateful smile. That's all I ask. He turned to leave, but before stepping out, he looked back at her one last time. Grace, thank you. For proving that not everyone can be bought. As the door closed behind him, Grace sat quietly, the envelope still in her hands. Her mother smiled faintly. See, child? Sometimes even the rich need saving. Grace didn't answer. She just stared at the letter, her heart heavy with confusion. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but a small voice inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, she should try. A week later, Grace stood once again in the grand marble lobby of the Cole residences. But this time, she wasn't wearing a maid's uniform. She wore a neat gray suit that she had saved up to buy second-hand. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her chin was lifted high. She wasn't the same scared woman who once hid her voice in corners. The security guard smiled when he saw her. Welcome back, Miss Turner. Heard you got a promotion. Grace smiled softly. Something like that. As she rode the elevator to the top floor, her heart beat fast, not from fear this time, but something different. Determination. She wanted to prove that good people could still rise, even after being broken. When she stepped out, the same assistants who once whispered about her fell quiet. Some pretended to be busy. Others just stared. Grace smiled politely and walked to her new office, a small glass room beside Ethan's. A few minutes later, Ethan appeared in the doorway. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed something new, respect. Welcome back, Miss Turner, he said. Grace nodded. Thank you, Mr. Cole. I plan to make this work. I don't doubt that, he said softly. For the first few days, their conversations were short and professional. Ethan gave instructions, Grace handled them with quiet skill. Slowly, he began to notice the little things, how she greeted every cleaner by name, how she listened before speaking, and how she stayed late to help the staff finish. One afternoon, as they reviewed reports in his office, he asked, "Why do you still treat everyone so kindly after what happened?" Grace looked up, smiling gently. Because kindness isn't something you give only when life is fair. It's who you are, even when no one deserves it. Her words hit Ethan deeper than he expected. For years, he had built walls made of pride and fear. But around Grace, those walls began to crack. That evening, as the staff left for the day, Ethan watched Grace help a janitor clean up spilled coffee, a task far below her new role. She didn't do it for attention. She did it because it was right. For the first time in a long time, Ethan smiled, not the cold, practiced smile people saw in meetings, but a real one. Later, as Grace packed her things, he walked over. "You've changed this place, you know," he said quietly. Grace looked surprised. "I'm just doing my job, sir." "No," he said, shaking his head. "You're doing more than that. You remind people that honesty and kindness still matter. Even to someone like me." She looked at him for a long moment and nodded. "Maybe we're both learning something." That night, as Grace rode the bus home, she gazed out the window at the city lights. Her reflection stared back, not the maid who had been humiliated, but a woman who had chosen integrity over comfort. She smiled softly. "Maybe Mama was right," she whispered. "Doing the right thing always finds its way back to you." And somewhere across the city, Ethan Cole sat in his office, staring at the same lights, finally understanding what real wealth meant. Months passed, and both Ethan Cole and Grace Turner had changed in ways neither expected. The once cold, unreachable billionaire had become calmer, warmer, even kind. And the maid who once scrubbed his floors now stood beside him in meetings, confident and respected. Under Grace's care, the Cole residences became known not just for its beauty, but for how fairly it treated every worker. For the first time, Ethan listened more than he spoke. His staff noticed. His board noticed. And deep down, Grace noticed too. One morning, Ethan called Grace into his office. "There's a press event tomorrow," he said. "I want you to stand beside me." Grace frowned. "Sir, I don't think that's necessary." "It is," he said firmly. "You've earned it." The next day, reporters filled the Grand Hall of Coal Industries. Cameras flashed, lights glowed, and journalists waited as Ethan stepped up to the podium. Grace stood beside him, her heart pounding. She had never been in front of so many people before. Ethan adjusted the microphone and began, "Today, we're launching a new foundation, the Turner Initiative." Grace's eyes widened. She turned to look at him, speechless. Ethan continued, his voice clear and steady. "This foundation will provide scholarships and housing for hardworking families who need a second chance. It's named after someone who reminded me that honesty isn't cheap, it's priceless." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed brighter. Grace blinked back tears. She wasn't used to attention, especially not this kind. When the event ended, a reporter called out, "Mr. Cole, why name it after her?" Ethan smiled softly. "Because once, I tested a maid's honesty and failed my own test instead. She taught me that the richest man in the room is the one who can admit he was wrong." People clapped again, louder this time. Grace turned toward Ethan, her eyes shining. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I wanted to," he said. "The world needed to hear your story." After the event, as they stood near the balcony overlooking the city, Ethan said quietly, "I used to think money made me powerful. But you showed me that power means nothing without character." Grace smiled. "And I used to think honesty only brought pain. But maybe it just takes longer to see the reward." They stood there for a moment, watching the sunset paint the city gold. As the wind brushed her hair, Grace turned to him and said, "Do you still test people, Mr. Cole?" He smiled, shaking his head. "No. I've learned enough." Grace looked back at the glowing skyline. "Funny," she said softly. "I thought finding that wallet would just be another bad day at work. Turns out, it was the beginning of everything." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes the smallest acts show us the biggest truths." And as the last light faded behind the tall Chicago buildings, both of them knew that this story, born from a single act of honesty, would never be forgotten. Moral: true wealth isn't measured by money, but by the kind of heart you carry when no one is watching.